I'm here today with Kevin Sweeney. Kevin is co-founder and lead pastor of Imagine Church, an urban church in Honolulu that is welcoming of all people, sees imagination as the key to the future, and chooses authenticity over performance, substance over hype, and quality over quantity. I love those values personally. He's the host of the podcast The Church Needs Therapy and is the author of the forthcoming books. First one is The Making of a Mystic, My Journey with Mushrooms, My Life as a Pastor, and Why It's Okay for Everyone to Relax, which comes out on May 31st.
Yes,
And the
sir.
second book, which won't be out until January 2023, is called The Joy of Letting Go. Both are from Choir Publishing, Quoir.
Yep.
Kevin lives in Honolulu with his wife and co-founder of Imagine Church, Christine, and their two kids. You can learn more at imaginehi.org. So Kevin, it's awesome to be able to spend some time with you today.
Oh man, one, I'm so grateful to be here too. I just love hearing people read the title of my book. It just makes me so happy.
Well, it's a great title.
And what's funny about that is, like, when I do it, I know it's like, I'm adjust this a little bit. I know it's clever and I know, it's intriguing. I'm like, but it also captures these bigger picture movements of my life and the natural material and flow of the book. So I'm like, it's funny and intriguing, but I'm like, it's actually really real and really true to my experience and the content of the book. So man, thank you so much. We've connected before on my podcast when Brian was on, and to be here with you is such a gift and something I don't take for granted with these important steps leading up to the book and this time of my life. So I appreciate you a lot, man.
Sure, certainly. Same here. But before we get into the book, tell folks a little bit more about your background, because you've had a unique journey to get where you are to today.
Yeah. First, the book, while it's not an autobiography, it has autobiographical moments of my life, without a doubt. They're not arranged chronologically. You can kind of piece them together. And it shares some defining moments of my own story. Existential crisis at 17, mushrooms as a spiritual guide for me when I didn't have any, a spontaneous awakening moment with God, right? This direct immediacy, this direct knowing of spirit for myself, and this complete reorientation of my life and this true rewiring of my consciousness after that happened. And the book gives a glimpse of some more details of the life where I was leading into that awakening, what led me to that moment, and how my life was transformed after. And then just the day-to-day wisdom from my life as a friend, as a husband, as a pastor, as a creative. And that's something, when people read the book, I want them to feel the mysticism of every day. So I could say it's about non-dual seeing, and it's also about choosing your kids over building a platform. It's about pastoring, but it's about pastoring from a creative and a liberated place that knows I have what my ego sometimes wants to seek from others, and what it means to pastor and lead from a liberated place that is living out of, oh, I already have all of these things that sometimes we go seeking in the things that we do. So to me, there's this large cosmic vision, this beautiful cosmic vision of reality the mystic will share. And then then Tuesday afternoon, concretely, that means I'm able to be present to the person who's right next to me. So it's like this zooming out and then zooming back in into what love actually feels like and sounds like in our day-to-day lives. So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there, man. It's something I'm really happy about and proud of.
So, you're a busy guy. You founded a church, right? And you've got small children. Those two alone are like major life endeavors. What motivated you to also write a book?
Yeah, we spoke briefly before this interview, and the shutdown happens March 2020, like we all know. And I remember thinking, when I talked to the person who was responsible for running this amazing co-working space and this technology innovation place where our church was meeting at the time, and they were like, Kev, you can't, we have to close down for 4 weeks. I remember thinking to myself, how could Imagine survive 4 weeks of not meeting? And now, 18 months goes by until we met again consistently. And after a little bit, and Hawaii was one of the most restricted states, it was like 90% of my creative, sacred energy that naturally flows out for the sake of the world wasn't being harnessed into the place it had been for 7 years, which was Imagine, teaching, writing, being with people, organizing, mobilizing, etc. And the real idea for the book, and I do want to say for creatives and writers listening in, life doesn't always feel this romantic of what I'm about to say, but this is what happened to me. I'm going to tell you. So I live in Hawaii. I'm 2 blocks from the ocean. I'm 10-minute drive from the
fantasy land.
I'm a 10-minute drive from the mountains, and I was spending some time in silence up in an area of the mountains I'm very familiar with. And in that 20 minutes of silence in the middle of it, it was like, that's a book.
Wow.
And I saw it and it unfolded immediately. And I went home, and for the next 3 to 4 months, I have never been so singularly focused and obsessively just narrowed in on, and I mean that in a healthy kind of creative outpouring way, as I've never been like that for one project and for this book. And that was maybe July-ish, August. I'm organizing a little bit. I start writing, and within 3 months, the book is done in its first form,
Wow.
and it was special. I put myself on a very strict schedule with 2 kids. Like you said, I've been with my kids every day. My wife and I trade off every day. We have unconventional schedules. And I resisted the temptation to write a book for the sake of writing a book. So at 32, 33, when you can look around and that energy of comparison can say, hey, well, they wrote their first book at 33. Oh, well, this person already was here at this point. And when you do that, I could feel my ego contracting sometimes and thinking, well, I should do that, or I could do that, or whatever that dialogue is. And through my own times of silence and my own life as a whole, I always resisted that urge to write for the sake of building a platform, to write for the sake of getting ahead. I said, no, if that time ever comes, I will write because that is what that season of life is drawing out of me and naturally wants to flow. And I'm really happy that I did that. And when the moment came unexpectedly, I was like, this is special. And I just kept going. Yeah.
Good for you. Good for
you.
I mean, it speaks to
so basically go to Hawaii, just sit in the mountains in silence, and you too can come up with a whole book in the moment.
Right, exactly. That easy. Well, I mean, that just speaks to a lot of different things. Your discipline, your insight, your introversion, looking inside yourself. It was just really great.
Mm.
But now that it's done and it's coming out, who would you say it's intended for? A lot of publishing houses want to know, right? Who's the audience?
Yeah. One, anyone can say, to be a gift to anybody. Okay, sure. Of course. If anyone picks it up and pays attention, I think there is some wisdom of the ages from the perennial tradition, from the great Christian mystics flowing through me as I see myself as a part of that little stream and that legacy flowing throughout history. But I will say, I think it was in the press release that I sent out, and one of the lines was like, while so many people are talking about deconstruction, the dark night of the soul, and their faith falling apart, this book's written from the place of light, joy, and freedom on the other side. Everyone's talking about deconstruction right now. Okay, well, if you zoom out a little bit, what people refer to as deconstruction from my perspective is actually just the transition from one stage of faith to another. It's the transition from one stage of consciousness to another. And it's a big deal because when you first go through that massive paradigm shift, it is very disorienting and it's very confusing and it can even be traumatic. So I know all that. But when you stop raging against the machine, when you learn the art of transcending and including, when we stop being mad and fighting the old, well, guess what? Our life goes on. What are we still going to create? What are we going to build? How are we going to, regardless of your current beliefs about God, how are we going to embody that spirit of God and love and justice and grace for the sake of the world? And for me, it's like, hey, let's go through that moment. If you're in that moment, keep going. Sometimes, even to the people who are in that place, sometimes what feels like the loss in the foundation of your faith might just be the spirit inviting you to the future of your faith. So keep going. And once that's over, there's all kinds of joy in life and freedom and ways to connect and create and build. And I'm writing from that place of this keeps getting better. And the path of Christ keeps getting wider and more inclusive and more expansive and more hopeful and more exciting and more interesting after. So for me, it's definitely for people who know the path is getting wider. There's a lot of uncertainty. I don't know exactly where I'm going, but I do want to keep following this desire for truth and God and life and what's real to the future, because you can keep going, and the experiences of joy and peace will keep increasing from my perspective. The courage can keep increasing if you keep going and if you keep growing. So I think it has a lot of life for people who are in different places on that spectrum.
Cool. So if I could, I'd like to read a couple of endorsements for the book.
Nice. Let's do that.
A couple of our mutual collaborators. First one's from Brian McLaren. He says this: one of my mentors used to say, what is the most personal to you is the most universal to me. That's how I felt when I read Kevin Sweeney's new book. By telling the story of a spiritual journey, Kevin sparked my own spiritual curiosity and hunger. You may never have considered yourself a mystic, but in these pages, you'll find resonance with some of your own deepest hopes, longings, and intuitions. So in that quote, Brian, to me, raises a good question. What does it mean to be a mystic? And so could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. To be a mystic is to have your faith, which means your life, defined by and grounded in direct experience of the sacred, direct knowing, which is actually a being known by God and by spirit. So for the mystic, the foundation of our faith is not, here's the set of beliefs I have. It's not the foundation. The mystic knows whatever I am, this capital I, this large S self, whatever the self is, whatever I am has beliefs, but I also know I am not those beliefs. So one, in the most simple way, the mystic's the one who has the direct, unmediated, allowing myself to fall apart, be undone, and be put back together in the presence of God over and over and over again. And so the mystic is the one who can live with no resistance. There's nothing to resist. There's nothing we can't accept here, right? The mystic is the one who can embody pure acceptance, because the mystic is the one who has done for reality as a whole what we usually do for individuals. I have to accept and love them and embrace them as they are. And the mystic knows, well, if you zoom out far enough, you have to do that for the universe itself. How do I accept, embrace, and take all of this into me without judgment, without labeling, accept it all as it is, as my beginning point? And then after that, we continue our lives. And also the mystic doesn't have to hold on to anything too tightly and really at all, because they experience at a deeper level they're being held by everything. So the mystic, their life isn't defined by their belief in God. It is by the death of the very self you thought you were, who was believing in God, and the being, whatever is born after that, this larger cosmic transcendent true self after that is like, well, this is who we really are. Our life is beneath, beyond, and before who we thought we were for so long. And they can live and trust and fall deeper and deeper into love and life and God. So I could say more, but I'll stop there for now, or else that's the whole podcast.
No, there's a lot of different directions that we could take this, but I mean, one, for me, I'd like you to talk about a little bit, if you could, is, mystic and mystery, right? Are the same root. And that implies to me a lot of uncertainty.
Mm.
right? And some people are more comfortable with uncertainty than others. Some religions are
Is it
more,
like if the more here's what I would say. I've never said this before. The more you like to-do lists, the more you probably have some work to do of letting go of certainty. There seems to be a connection there for me.
I'm not sure I agree with that one necessarily. To me, those are two different things. But talk a little bit about your comfort with uncertainty.
Yeah, that is a great question, because that gets down to the practical felt experience for the mystic and for the great lovers and knowers of God. I tell a story in the intro of the book. I'm 24 and my wife and I lived in Orange County for 5 years before we moved back to Hawaii. And I had this profound awakening moment with God at 18, right? I've had a practice of silence from the beginning, from the inception of that, so I'm quite comfortable, contemplative walks, silence, sitting in a room with a candle lit. Like I'm a very strange person, right? And I'm on this contemplative walk at nighttime, just breathing, just being present. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not doing anything. I'm just wherever I am. It's just a practice of presence. And while I was on that walk, I had this funny dialogue that happened, and it might have been out loud. It might have been in my head. I don't remember. But one voice says, "It's one of those moments where you just know." And the second voice says, "Know what?" And then the first voice responds by saying, "I don't know, but you just do." That to me captures those beautiful creative tensions and paradoxes of knowing and unknowing, of belief and unbelief, of faith and uncertainty, and all of them coexisting and being closely related siblings and a part of the same family than we all are probably comfortable with at different times. But one, if you just think about the idea of beliefs and knowing God, there's always uncertainty. Kevin, do you believe in God? Yes. Well, what do you believe about God? I don't know. My view of God is always evolving and changing, and beliefs are important, but I don't know with certainty what the shape of the divine is, if there is any metaphysical structure to it. I don't know.
Almost by definition, we can't know, right?
It's like, I remember reading Peter Rollins for the first time, and this is 13 years ago or something. And, he was that long ago was saying, anytime you name God is not to name God, is to name your understanding of God. And Brian McLaren, who you brought up a long time ago, saying he said something along the lines of people trust more in their theology of God than they do in God, or something like that. He talked about that. And so there's uncertainty. I'm giving my entire life to that which I cannot name, contain, or control. That's already a crazy thing to do. It's just insanity. It's to be a mystic is to be insane. It's amazing. And then also, to me, the mystic is the one who just trusts. The mystic is the who trusts what? Trusts life, trusts death, trusts light, trusts darkness, trusts joy, trusts pain. Because the mystic can receive all of that into their lives without resisting, without compartmentalizing, without denying, without hiding from or coping with any of that. We can receive it all in and just let it be, because we trust. Every time you embrace the death, every time you go into the darkness, it's always light and resurrection on the other side. There's a quote from the book that says, "To be a mystic is to attend your own funeral over and over, but also to discover that the funeral is actually the entrance to the party." And so the unknowing in our practical life is, I'm in a transitional season of my life. I don't know if you saw that from the media, but we announced we're in the last chapter of Imagine. So my wife and I gave 10 years to start a church, and now we're in a chapter where in 4 weeks, actually, a month from today, the last Sunday of May will be the last Sunday we do. So I'm 37
Wow.
and looking at starting over with a new decade of my life. And I'm not just like a single guy who goes garage to garage surfing, and just doing nothing. Like I have 2 kids who are starting their journeys in education. I have a wife. We have a house. We have an apartment and we have a life. And the older you get, the harder it is to take those risks because of the fear of the economic implications, et cetera. The mystic's the one who says, hey, of course things can go bad. Of course things may not go the way you planned. But it seems as if, and the mystic's comfortable saying those things, no guarantee. It seems as if every time I walk to the edge of the boundaries of my own life, because the Spirit's inviting me beyond them, even when it makes no sense, even without steps 13 and 14 clear, every time I step beyond that, the path seems to unfold and get even better. Why not do that again? So I think the mystic's my trust isn't in the circumstances working out. My trust is in no matter what happens, the Spirit that Colossians says holds all things together is going to hold me together. And I'm cool with that taking place. Even if this doesn't work out, it doesn't change anything fundamental about the essence of who I am or who God is. And that's where my life is born out of that place. And things can go bad, but that fixed center point of nothingness, which is actually paradoxically a fullness in God, that's where my life's born out of, and nothing can change that. And the mystic knows that. So I'm very comfortable with uncertainty. It's like, what do you know? I'm like, I don't know. We're not supposed to know. It's not an adventure if you know.
Really? What would faith be if we knew everything?
Exactly.
So here's the second endorsement from Brandon Robertson.
Yes, sir.
He says, when one thinks of mystic, we tend to think of gurus tucked away in mountain monasteries who spend their day meditating in search of transcendent experiences. While that may be one way to experience the mystical, Kevin's book, The Making of a Mystic, reveals a more accessible path for the rest of us. Through captivating stories from his own journey and practical wisdom, Kevin walks the reader on a path toward profound spiritual depth and a renewed sense of joy and awe at life. This is a book for seekers, wanderers, and skeptics who are longing for a travel companion as they follow the inner nudging of their spirit to explore the depths of meaning and reality. Every page will challenge you, inspire you, and absolutely enthrall you. So buckle up and prepare to be transformed. So within
that guy must be a writer.
He must be a good writer. Huh? Surprise, surprise. So within that quote, he says, as they follow the inner nudging of their spirit to explore the depths of meaning and reality. So how would you say that the book achieves that?
Yeah, I think to bring that question out of that quote that's a great question. And also I think speaks to the heart of the engine within my entire life, to be honest. When I was 17, I had everything the people around me and the culture told me I was supposed to have to be happy or be whole or successful, and now it was more from some of the criminal side of things, or people who aren't not just criminal, but people who aren't into hey, he's getting a 4.0 and going to Stanford. It was no, well, one, I have opportunities to play basketball in college. That's great. And also I got involved in music and was rapping as a kid. And I had this sort of well-known drug dealer in a neighborhood offered me a lot of money as a kid to help support me in that. So I was, for people who saw the world the way I did, I had it at a young age. I had things going on, and my life was defined by a radical inward journey and a radical third person self-awareness of looking at myself and being honest. It's like, Kevin, you have everything everyone's telling you you're supposed to be happy and you're not happy. Why am I so restless? Why can't I go to sleep sober? Why am I always chasing the next thing? Why am I so driven by the need for approval from others? And so seeing through those illusions, right? That's a word that's usually associated with Buddhism, but to see your illusions, if I have enough people applauding me, then I'll feel whole. That's an illusion that drives us. If I have financial security, it'll actually give me inner peace. That's an illusion. That's why I tell people, if you want financial security, don't get a 401k, learn spiritual practices, because it comes from within.
That's pretty good.
Now, granted, if you get financial security, it's also helpful. And so my thing was, okay, well, if I have all of these cultural definitions of success and it's not making me whole or making me any less at peace, what am I doing here? What is all of this? That's what led me to on that conscious spiritual quest at 17 or 18, where I got to a point at that age when that's the whole mushrooms as a missionary, where mushrooms were like a guide for me, where I remember thinking to myself, I'm either going to discover the truth of this universe, which is audacious to think in general. And I was 17 at the time or 18. Like, I'm either going to discover what this is and what truth is, or I might kill myself, because who wants to suffer if there's no meaning? Who wants to suffer if there's no larger direction or story that's happening here? Because that's all I could see was the suffering at the time. I didn't have the light and the love yet. And so those inner nudgings, that was my whole life. Mm-hmm. I remember being 17 or 18 and going to a party and just pulling off to the side of the road and smoking a blunt by myself in my car, being like, why do I want to go to another party to hang out with people who don't know me and who don't actually care about me, people who would do me wrong in a second if they had to? And honestly, I would do the same to them, because I'm just as ruthless. We're all objectifying and using each other. And I was just like, I'd rather go home and be by myself and be real and start and go on my path and be fake anymore. And all I had was this deep inner knowing and desire of, I feel like a part of me may be going crazy, but I also I know I'm on the right path. I know I'm getting close to the truth. I can feel myself moving forward and growing, even though it's getting darker in some ways. I know it. So even when I had that profound awakening moment with God, I didn't have a youth pastor to say, you know what, that was Jesus. Yeah, nobody told me that. I came out of that experience and said, that was a rebirth. And no one coached me through that, and no one confirmed that for me, but I knew what happened. I just encountered that which I've been wondering existed and hoped was true for so long in my life. And it was so profound and real. So I think that deep inner compass of alignment with the spirit, and as it aligns with your body as well, has been my driving force. So the inner nudgings, whether in walking away from everything at 18, moving to Hawaii to be with my girlfriend and completely start over and give my life to God when I didn't even know that was a thing. Wow. I didn't know people gave their life to God. I just knew my whole life is going to be given to this. And it worked out well. That girlfriend's now my wife, and we have this amazing life together. We're back in Hawaii. But each time, all of the big risks my wife and I have taken, even now, I'm sitting at the edge of a new risk. I'm not a passive observer. I'm in the crucible of everything we're talking about. And deep down, I'm like, this feels like every 10 years of my life, there's a complete upending. There's a new risk for a new decade. Maybe I'll have a new beginning. And as scary as it all is, there's something deep within me that's like, I know exactly what I'm doing. And I sense the spirit align with me being like, dude, come on, keep going. You know, we're going to take this further. So wow. Well, that's kind of all I've always had that. That's what the foundation of my faith was, direct knowing and a direct trust, and a trusting in my own voice and how that co-mingles with the voice and spirit of God.
Wow. Well, it's really, kind of amazing and impressive, quite frankly, at such a young age. You came to such a fundamental realization.
And I knew it. Kierkegaard says we live life forwards and understand it backwards. And I do think that's true. Yeah. And I think that's true the majority of the time. We look back and we're like, oh, that's what was happening. Oh, that relationship. Oh, me having to accept that here actually created this open space for me to receive that here, right? We have that wisdom. And I think me being I'm in the moment, but I'm outside of myself with this radical third person. And then depending on what you believe about states of consciousness, you can have a fourth or a fifth person perspective too. That came later for me. But when you look at yourself, it's just about, I learned how to be honest with myself at a really young age. Like how to dismantle your own defense mechanisms to whatever degree, to be like, hey,
that's really powerful.
I'm not happy, or I would tell people on the path of really learning the sound of your own voice and asking the question, what do I want? We have to learn how to distinguish between desires that have been planted within us by others and desires that are organically being born out of who we are. Because they're not the same thing. And we think the desires of others, parents, family systems, cultural narratives telling us what we're supposed to want or whatever. And even at that age, I had to ask myself, do I love basketball, or do I just need basketball because that's the only place people will tell me I'm great or special, and that gives me a sense of worth? Am I really, wow, is my whole, all these hours I put in to prepare myself for college basketball, is this whole drive because I need other people to tell me I'm valuable? And if so, my whole sense of self is completely contingent upon other people, which means I'm not free and I'm enslaved to the opinions of others. That's not freedom. That's not peace, because I'll live and die with every interaction. And at 17, it's a tough thing to do because one, I have to admit, wow, my whole drive is the need for approval. That's sad. That's humiliating to the ego. And the other thing is, well, if that's true, I'm going to let go of that and completely start over. Like, that's why, Thomas Merton says we spend the first 35 years of our life climbing our ladder to the top, only get to the top to realize it's propped up against the wrong building. and those are the defining questions, especially for second half of life spirituality. When you have those experiences, what do you do when you're at the top? Some people might silence the voice and say, I've had those thoughts, but I've worked my whole life to get here. How could I downsize? That would mean my kids can't go here. That would mean money here. We know what that means. So maybe I'll silence that authentic voice within me and just go through the motions forever. Okay. Or maybe I'll fight against it. And maybe the issue is I just need to climb higher in the same ladder. No, that's not to me, the courageous moment in the movement towards authenticity and alignment is, sometimes you got to jump off and start over again. And actually, the thing you avoid the most oftentimes is the very place that your second chapter of your life is going to be born again.
I've seen that repeated over and over, including in myself. And so I couldn't agree more with
I love that.
The value of that.
Yeah.
So before we finish up, though, I'd like for you to touch, if you could, on the second book. I know it's not going to be out for a while yet, but you want to give folks just a little preview of that?
Sure. The second book, these are rough titles. I'm still promoing, getting ready for the first, but The Joy of Letting Go, I think, will remain the title. The subtitle could be I've thought how one thing has the power to change everything. And the idea of, and where that book comes out of, and I wrote that, I wrote that first book, like I told you. And when I was putting my proposal together and shopping it around, I was like, I have this other book in me. I just knew it. And I just started working on it. And then by the end of 2020 was The Making of a Mystic was done. End of 2021, this book was done. It was really an amazing run. I'm so grateful for it. And it was such a great time. I love creating and writing. I love teaching. I love organizing. And for creatives, I tell them, the product is for others, but the process is for you.
Yeah.
The joy is in the making and the life is in the creating. My joy is not the final product of a book. That's for other people. My joy is if I can fall in love and realize the paradox of creativity is what you get from it is actually in the act of giving itself. The process is for me. That's where I'm so aligned, spirit, joy, it's all great. So anyways, for that book, it's the idea of letting go is not one thing we do that stands alongside of others. Letting go is that which holds together everything we do. And so there's each chapter, one's about I kind of forget, justice and compassion and creativity and relationships and growing spiritually and evolving. In each one of those, what I'm saying is letting go is required to do every single one of these well. Mm-hmm. So if you want to be a person like you and I both know great activists and voices for justice who I just so admire, their work and their drive and their fire, Now, when I look at them, I say, you can grind and you can fight for justice and you can do this way better than I ever could. But if you want to do this in a way that's sustainable, if you want to do this in a way that doesn't just create justice in the world, but allows space for real joy in your life without getting angry, without getting angry, bitter, resentful, letting go is the path forward. If you want to create and actually enjoy it, if you want to create from a place of freedom, there's things you need to let go of. If you want to forgive people, there's things you need to let go of. Every single thing we do, like letting go is not one thing. Letting go is the thing beneath everything we do in order to keep doing it really well. You want to learn how to begin again when you fail? There's things you got to let go of. There's probably expectations you had on where your life's supposed to be right now. You got to let go of those to just create out of where you are. You want to work for justice? You got to probably let go of the way you thought justice work was supposed to go or how much of an impact you were supposed to have by this point. Let go of that and keep working after that. That's the thing is, if you want to change the world, let go of your need to change the world. Because a lot of that need to change or the need to win oftentimes is actually your own ego's need to win. Your own egos need to be successful. If we can let go of that, now we can change the world, but we're doing it from a place where we're not grinding against reality. We're actually in the flow of the spirit that wants to transform reality, knowing it's not completely upon us to do it. So the whole book is letting go is beneath the surface of everything we do. And if you want to learn how to live with joy in the midst of all the amazing things we're doing, there's no substitute for some real letting go along the way.
Wow. Well, good for you.
Yeah,
very
man.
Insightful.
Thank you.
So again, the name of the book that's just coming out in May is The Making of a Mystic, My Journey with Mushrooms, My Life as a Pastor, and Why it's okay for everyone to relax.
Yes, sir.
31st. So where should people go if they want to find out more about you, about the book?
Yes, thank you for asking that. One, the best place to follow along with me day to day is on Instagram is where I'm the most active. So at Kevin Sweeney 1, the number 1, at Kevin Sweeney 1 is the details of, I have prints that are connected with the book. I have merch and clothes and a collection that's connected with the book. When I'm doing an event, a book release party here in Hawaii, I'm doing one in California the next week. And I just got off the phone or a Zoom with somebody where I might do an event in New York, I think 2 weekends after that. So yeah, at Kevin Sweeney 1, my own podcast, The Church Needs Therapy, where half the time I interview amazing guests like Brian, who will, I believe, be my next guest that I put out because we did that interview a little while ago. And so it's half interviews, half me actually doing my own teachings on things just because I, have the energy and I enjoy doing that and think there's some good stuff there. And yeah, the book comes out May 31st on Amazon. I assume it'll be up before that, but it'll be available for order for that day. And yeah, I'm really happy with the book. I'm really happy with the endorsements, 2 of which, you read. And
yeah.
I'm happy with just like, again, the gift is in the giving, the joy is in the making, the life's in the creating. And yesterday I was at a print, my friend helps around a print studio. They do so much clothes out here. And just got to be with him yesterday as they're printing all of the merch connected with the book, the shirts and everything I'm doing. And I'm like, I love the whole process. For me is just so fun and such a gift. And I really do think there's a unique offering within the book for people because the guiding engine for me in my creative life and my pastoral life is there's always more life. There's always more joy ahead. There's always more courage ahead. There's always more connection ahead if we keep letting go, if we keep taking risks, if we keep trusting. That's the dynamic relationship between us and God and the life of the Spirit calling us in this world. And I hope people can feel that. And the next step for everybody is always different. And somehow if that book helps people see with clarity or have the courage to see some of those next steps, amazing. And I would love to hear more about that for people. So yeah, man, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Kevin, and congratulations on all your work. And I'm really looking forward to watching where you head next beyond just the books. So thanks for sharing.
And if the New York thing works out, I don't always know East Coast travel Jersey there, but I'm gonna let you know.
Good. Absolutely. Sounds good, Kevin.
Cool.
Thanks again.
Thanks, Brian.